Yeah. All right. Okay.
Panel, this debate is a valid judgment. Whether we should support or regret the action of the American football players of kicking a knee when the US National Anthem was played. We think that we would support this action because it achieves a conversation with society, an interaction, whether or not it is patriotic to stand when your country is crumbling with inconsistencies. We think, what is the context of today's debate, right? We think that when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, and because he felt that he cannot stand, and it's unpatriotic for him to stand. He cannot stand that the country is crumbling with police brutality. He cannot stand because that the countries are not in line with their core principle, which is within the song itself, it's the land of the free. Individuals on the ground are harmed and they cannot live their life freely. We think that's a harm that we do not want in our world. What's the argument coming from side opening government? What is the metric of the success of a protest? But before, let's characterize what's a protest. We think that it's a form of defiance and disobedience towards the norms and rules within a certain society. But these norms, it blinds you from the thing that they're harming individual on the ground. It blinds you from acknowledging the suffering that people are going through. Things like police brutality, when individuals on the ground does not have representation, right? We think that these are the kind of individuals that can give that amount of representation towards these individuals. We think that when it comes to protest also, do you remain silent, or do you want to be vocal about it? These are the kind of individuals that have sacrificed a lot of things, and we think that it's still justified, right? When the whole point of protest is to confront the reality, where you care so much of the point that you want to be impolite and break the norms of society. But does it have to be successful at the end of the day? What's the end goal for you to have protests at the end of the day, right? Is it to create immediate action, or is it to have at least a conversation, an acknowledgement that things are wrong within society? We think that is the thing that we want to achieve and still better. But how does it apply to the context of today's debate? We think that NFL players are one of the best athletes in the world. They are paid $18 million. They earn $18 million, and it doesn't include the endorsement that they get. They should say something because they can say something, right? These are the kind of individuals that have influence, that are covered by the media, that their opinions matter. They are in the position where they have influence over society. We think that, especially also when it comes to American football players, right, where it is deemed American football, where it is deemed as a national sport, people identify the sport as something that they are very proud of, that it's America, the American sport. We think that the kind of value that these individuals would then push after, also already when we've established that they have influence, is that they are able to challenge the norms of society. But what are the things that they are risking, and why is it still justified at the end of the day, right? Things like maybe college, he got dropped immediately after he took a knee, and like death threats and insults coming from people on the ground. We think that it's something that's brave and it's American. It's something that we should be proud of. We think that people within visibility should create questions within society. We think if these are the kind of individuals does not if they don't do this, they are complicit with being complicit with the actions that the government is currently doing. We think that because they already have such influence, they should be changing. They should be pushing for ideas that can help the society better. But after Colin Kaepernick got fired, his narrative was immortalized. He became a martyr. He became an example that society would push, that this is the kind of thing that we support. 200 players after Colin got fired have stood up for people that are harmed within society. We think that's the kind of change that we want at the end of the day. But let's talk about basic principles, right? The first principle, why is it still justified for him to exercise freedom of speech? What's the purpose of freedom of speech? To even begin with. It's a purpose where you want to express your opinion. It includes actions and speech, and it includes actions and speech. The 200 players, they locked their arms together to show unity, to show defiance that the that the state is not doing their job right. We think that even if the president itself does not support this action, we think that it's still justified. Even Nazis, neo-Nazis, or like Nazi supporters, Nazi sympathizers within the America have the right to express their opinion, right? We think that America is supposed to be the land where you can say anything as long as it doesn't harm a third party. It's not North Korea where your family and you would be killed if you were to go against the government. We think this kind of freedom should enable people on the ground to go for, to push for an idea that that changes the norm society and breaks the narrative that you should not care for the suffering that people are going through. Before I move on, actually, any point of view? Nice. All right, so we think that this right for the NFL players to push for this idea should be protected as well, even if it's something that's something that's active, even if it's something that's brutal when it comes to vocalizing their argument or vocalizing their opinion. We think that's something that should be protected. These are the kind of things that change and creates a perceptual change within society. But let's preempt the argument coming from side opening or opening of the show, any house coming from opposition, right? Where maybe they would say that, okay, this will disincentivize other famous personals that have influence already, because that, like how Colin Kaepernick got fired. We would say even after he got fired, there are a lot of individuals that have put him as an example. We would say that even if some of these individuals are disincentivized, a lot of people would align themselves with this narrative, right? A lot of these individuals have influence and they would want to retain that influence. And fighting for social justice is something that they can benefit from, especially when it comes to maybe like endorsements of money that they want to get. These are the kind of things that would benefit them. But what's the comparative in this? When we support, we show an active action against the police brutality, against the action that the government is currently doing wrong, especially when it comes to America or cases in police brutality, where these police are not even punished by their actions when they shoot innocent individuals on the ground. We think this is not something that we should support. But on the side opposition, what they would do is just wait and be silent and not let anything be achieved into this debate. We think that's harmful. Side by side opening government.
Like the Prime Minister for that speech, neither opposition be here.
Mr. Speaker, we regret to live in a world where you will get fired from your own national team when you kneel down during the national anthem in order to fight off racial equality or police brutality. We tell you that we would rather you take more radical steps or more impactful steps to actually fight off this problem, right? Before that, a few rebuttals for the opening government side. So the Prime Minister came up and said that the problems that exist, the issues, the racial equality, racial inequality, police brutality, all exist because the inconsistency of the principles in America, right? But I'll tell you that when you take these silent steps, when you actually do this silent protest, it will only make the problem. You won't even have any beneficial impacts to this problem, right? That will further explain my speech. Next, they really tell us about how the government side is living in a utopian world where they said that that these players, that when they take the knee, they will get condemned, they will receive death threats and so forth. But they also mentioned that when these people are disincentivized, they will still get some sort of support from society, but it still doesn't push away the fact that they will still get condemned, they will still get death threats. And we tell you that these things are invisible. These harms that they get, is not worth what they did. So what is the stance of the opening opposition sides for today? We want to achieve a world where people will, yes, we still we still want a world. We still want to achieve a world where people will not be silent and sit down against inequality, against discrimination. We still want a world where people will protest, but we want, and when a certain party protests, we believe that there will always be a certain harm, and there will still be harms. But we tell you that we want to achieve a world where the actions they do that to actually receive those harms will be actually worth it. So, what is this debate about? What is this debate really about? Right, sorry to sit down. This debate is about whether taking a knee is a relevant and impactful action towards fighting off police brutality and actually achieving racial equality. So, what is it actually taking a knee a relevant step towards achieving these goals? Right? To tell you that the problem will only get worse because we tell you that these players they will get fired from the team, they will be condemned, and so forth. But we tell you that these players will get looked down upon, and be deemed disrespectful by the society. Closing.
Now, if you think that this form of protest is too silent for you, what is the alternative that you propose to go against this?
I will further explain that in my speech later. So, to tell you that when they actually do these silent protests, right, it doesn't even have any impact towards actually fighting off these issues, to actually solving these issues. Because even they've been doing this since 2016. We're only a month away from entering 2018, and nothing has changed. Nothing has actually no beneficial outcome has came out from this taking a knee action, right? So we tell you that these players who are kicked off the team, who are actually condemned in society, sorry to sit down, who actually condemned in society, will not give any beneficial outcome to solving this issue. Next, so what will we actually rather how will we actually want these players to fight off these issues, right? So we would rather this because these players they have a really high degree of influence in the society. So we tell you we would rather them make more radical steps, for example, speaking out at media conferences or actually making peaceful protests, because we would rather them doing something that even if that they will still get kicked, they will still get condemned. We tell you that this has a higher chance of changing, of actually, even if not changing completely, it will actually have an impact on society's perception towards these races, and it will actually they will have more initiatives to actually shed some light on the problem of police brutality. So the opposition side today, we would rather have these players do something something more radical, something that will actually people will acknowledge because they will receive the harm, but we want to achieve a world where the harms they receive will actually be outweighed by the benefits of their actions. Anyway.
Alright, so media conferences, we can have that still, it's not mutually exclusive to your side only. But a game that is watched by almost all families within America, tell us how is this not effective in telling people that that's unpatriotic?
Well, actually, we tell you that NFL is watched by almost by the whole world, and people watch it and they will acknowledge when somebody is not standing up during the national anthem. But we tell you that this is such a silent step. Yes, people will acknowledge, oh, that player, why isn't that player standing up during the national anthem during the national anthem? But people won't see it as something that is actually relevant or something that is actually beneficial or impactful, because he's simply yes, it is deemed as unpatriotic, it's deemed as disrespectful, so forth. But people will actually see it as something that you need to do something about it so it doesn't happen again. So, and even if when you do peaceful protests, and even if you speak out in the conferences, right? Even if the government, even if the state doesn't do anything to fight off these issues, right? Tell you that it will have an impact. This action will actually have an impact on how the society sees, these problems, how society actually perceives the players, perceives the issues that's happening in the world today. So, if you want a world where the harms that these players receive will actually be outweighed by the benefits they receive, go inside opposition.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition, for that speech. Can we please invite the deputy prime minister? Get here. Good job.
Chair, before I move on to my speech, let me just very quickly point out that open opposition here, agrees with us in principle. Agrees with us in principle that we should be proud of the expression of freedom of speech, that they agree with us that protests do create some kind of change, right? Right, so insofar as opposition bench so far is that they have no disagreement with us about the power of protest, no disagreement with us about the nature of what is wrong with America today. They have no objection at all with the idea that we should be proud about America because it stands for freedom of speech and people are not imprisoned for expressing that same speech, right? This means that the entirety of PM's speech was not only engaged with, but also that they largely agree with him, like, entirety what it says. It was a great speech, I absolutely agree, best speech ever, huge speech, right? What am I going to do? I'm going to talk to you about one thing, right? I'm going to talk to you on 3 levels about how the players kneeling together, the show of unity versus the man, right? The underdog on 3 levels. 1, against racial inequality, like society in general, things like white privilege. Secondly, against owners, and I'll talk about the context in which players today are fighting for things like recognition of brain damage and how that's crucial for them standing together. That shows some kind of solidarity. But thirdly, I'll talk about how they stand together against the military-industrial complex where patriotism has been tied together with sports, and how this creates a conversation about what does it really mean to be an American? Do you have to be someone who believes in sports? Do you have to be someone who supports the military 100% of the time? We argue that it's created the conversation. No. But before that, I have some extraneous rebuttals really to make, right? One is this idea that we are not doing enough. So right now, let's get this straight. This is now a debate about extent. To what extent do we do this thing, right? So they wanted to make this a policy debate all of a sudden, and they wanted to tell us that we should do something more. I was a bit disappointed, I'll be honest, when they said, let's have media conference instead. I was expecting a bit more direct action through Black Lives Matter. In fact, maybe a bit more like, maybe everyone should just quit the NFL, right? Like just to show, a middle finger to the establishment. I was expecting a bit more from that. But given that they're willing to defend media conferences, I think it's very fair for closing opposition because we had basically the same POI prepared, right? Which is like, it's not mutually exclusive, right? There's nothing mutually exclusive between media conferences, which is visible, right? Versus the NFL, versus kneeling during a televised match. But actually, if you notice, right, there's a vast difference between the audiences for people watching a game versus people watching a media conference after a game. There are more people who would watch that rather than that. So actually, we would argue that your argument about extent actually works against your favor because media conferences are far less watched and far less visible, right? So I think all in all, let's presume at that best. Let's presume maybe closing opposition will argue for an escalation, and we would argue preemptively why that's bad, because what it does is it removes the incentive for you to have a peaceful resolution to racial issues within America rather than having a discussion about it. The moment you move to direct action is the moment you resort to things like violence, and what's happening today is the association of Black Lives Matter with riots, with racial riots, and that's made people even more defensive and less likely to really talk about these kind of issues because of their visceral reaction to that kind of violence to begin with. Right. Let's first point out, really, that if they want to argue about the fact that this is ineffective, like it's been a few months, nothing has happened. Let me first point out several things. One, slavery took 100 years to abolish from America's establishment. Right? 2, it took another 100 years from that abolishing of slavery for Black people to even get legal rights, like legal equal rights, right? But that's not even actual equality, right? Even today, black people do not have, minorities of all kinds don't get equal rights. Are they saying that people shouldn't protest, that we should stop protesting because it's been ineffective, we haven't achieved those things? We don't think so, right? We know that change is gradual, and we don't think it's realistic for you to expect instantaneous change overnight. Sure, I'll take PI right now.
We're not questioning what you're saying here. So what we are telling is the mean of the kind of protest that you're doing. The silent protest is not beneficial. You have to understand that.
Yeah, okay, but I understand your point. But the point is there has to be a comparative. You need to tell us why you regret that to the extent to which it's ineffective. In order for that to work, you need to show us that there are alternative means that will be far more effective or will achieve those same kind of gains as well. I would really like to see that kind of engagement coming from closing opposition, right? So the answer we have at the end of the day, should they have stopped? Right, let's move on to this first study of show of unity versus demand. Why we support that, right? We think that America has consistently supported the underdog against a greater establishment, which is why the founding myth of America as being a small group of colonists versus the great might of the British Empire is something that resonates not only within America, but also in all kinds of freedom fighters across the world. So let's talk about the first idea of why a small group of people, like NFL members, as much as they're rich, right, they're still a minority within the society. The fact that 200 players of mixed races were willing to interlock their arms and kneel together is a symbolism of how far we've gone since the days of Martin Luther King Jr., when he said, "I have a dream." And he said that he looks forward to a day in which brothers of all colors can stand side by side against each other. This is an important symbolism as to, in a world in which Trump has created a world where there is an impression that it's a divide between whites against everyone else. The show of them kneeling together is an important symbol to show that even when you're rich, even in the circumstances when you face backlash and be fired, you can still stand together against racial inequality, against those norms of police brutality. That's one. Two is that what's important to note is that owners constantly have the struggle against players, right? And players are constantly fighting for their benefits. And sometimes the way players are picked off, like what happened to Colin, is a sign of how dangerous it is for players to let one of their own be picked off simply for protesting. They never engage to the point that these players are simply exercising their freedom of speech, and they need to be able to defend that freedom of speech against all kinds. That means they must also be able to willingly stand together in solidarity against owners firing one of them. Lastly, is the idea of the military-industrial complex. Right? We think that patriotism is frequently used as a tool of recruitment for the military. People feel or are convinced into entering the military. This discussion about what it means to be American is frequently drawn with this idea that you have to own guns, you have to go hunting, you have to be an American, you have to play any kind of sport, whether it's basketball, baseball, American football, right? But what this does is it makes people question, wait a second, why is it that we have veterans at NFL football games? Why do we have fighter jets flying overhead? Is it really so necessary that in order for you to be patriotic, you have to agree 100% with what Americans believe in? That you have to be able to live with police brutality and say, it's okay, that's still in America, we're proud of. Is taking a knee enough? It's a start, and it inspires others and it creates a conversation. Can it change anything? We argue yes, because people who changing their minds will create a critical mass to create change. We're proud to win from opening government.
Just by 200 athletes holding hands, their side thinks that they could actually bring a benefit or any benefit towards the society, how that they could eventually make America great again. The opening opposition says no. Before I start my speech, I have a couple of rebuttals for the opening government. So first, he said that the impact, I'm going to talk about the impact of media versus the impact of sports under the asset. So yes, we concede, we agree 100% that you have a larger audience. Yes, we concede that our media has like a smaller, the people viewing is in a small amount, but under our side, our audience, the people who see this media, the people who watch the media are much more influential. These people who can actually take a bigger action, and we see that's much better. So next, the Deputy Prime Minister said that their protest is somehow effective in some way. So let's see. It's almost 2018. They started 2 damn years ago, and we don't see anything happening. We don't see Trump actually agreeing on this or actually making a conference on this. And this shows how ineffective their protests are, and it's just a waste of time for a couple more years, maybe. Sit down. So next. So right now that these athletes are taking a knee, and we see that's a highly problematic action to do, because we only see harms from it. This will make more and more people in the society pissed, and this will make US like much more worse. So why is this athletes taking a knee not the way, not the protest not the action that should be taken? So because we believe that this will lead to more people we believe that Trump or his government will be much more radical. As example, Trump asked the owners to fire these players, and that's how radical Trump can be. So in a way, these athletes disrespect their home country. They disrespect the leaders. Yes. So yes, we concede that their rights are important and they should be taken into. But protesting like this will not only make things worse, and under their side, at the end of the day, we highly believe the goal that they're trying to achieve, the goal that they're trying, they want the rights to be achieved, will never happen and will never be achieved. So next, sit down. I'll take you in a minute. So what does our side enables, but their side diminishes? Okay. So first, the amount of impact. So under our side, our way is not being silent. We are speaking out and not protesting in silence, and it will be much more impactful. The society will get the awareness much better. The perception will be somehow better, and there's somehow a lot more people will somehow be actually supportive towards this protest, right? So sadly, under their side, they're just being disrespectful, but they're also decreasing the amount of impact that could happen, and much more. So next is the harms from the government side. So first, under their side, they're creating a world, as I said, that disrespects. An example here, these athletes are kneeling down while the national anthem is being played when they're supposed to stand up, right? We think that's highly irrelevant and stupid to do, because they'll just get more hate from the US government and also the society. Next, sit down. They are progressing towards a better world. They are progressing towards a better world. They are progressing towards reaching the goal they want to achieve. Will never be close. They'll just get much further and further away from what they want at the end of the day. And these athletes will be discriminated. They'll get backlash even more.
You said that this is bad because it creates a world where that is disrespectful. So do you agree that a world where freedom of speech is stifled is better than a disrespectful world?
Sorry? Okay.
You talk about why you said this is bad because it creates a world that is disrespectful. So do you agree that a world in which freedom of speech is stifled is better than a world that is disrespectful?
We believe that no, because we believe in freedom of speech, but we believe we want these people to express their freedom of speech with respect, because with respect, it'll eventually get more support, right? So benefits under opposition side is that under our side, we're taking the other alternative that at the very least, under our side, protests still happen, but the society perception towards this protest will not be as bad as under your side, and under your side, and under our side, they'll actually accept this protest and they'll hear us out at the end of the day. So the progression towards equality, the progression towards getting the rights, achieving the rights of these people will get closer and closer and eventually be achieved. People will be aware about this problem and thus have a better world at the end of the day. So next, let's go through what's happening under their side. Sit down, both of you. Sorry. They say that they protest because of the inconsistency that's happening on the land of free in America. But the only thing that they're doing right now is making things so much worse. They're increasing the inconsistency happening. They're segregating much more people in the society, and they're making
under Trump, who is they are making the powerful one mad. So on the other side, we say they are just asking for death. So next, our type of people, under our world, we will not be protesting in silence. We think silence is not the way to go. And we want them to speak up, to go to conferences, to stand up for their rights, to talk to discussions, who respects the people and who does it the right way. So what does our side want at the end of the day? We want the right actions to be taken by the society. We don't think by disrespecting the national anthem, by whatever the athletes are trying to do, could bring any change at the end of the day. So if you want America to be great again, go with side opening opposition. With that, I've never been
Thank you. Yellow, let's reach out to half your piece by the top area.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, what side CG stands for in this argument is not only a defense of basic human rights, but a defense of American values, especially given that the NFL takes place in America. Before I get into my substantives and extensions, a few rebuttals. First of all, the leaders seem to mischaracterize these protests as silent protests. We definitely do not agree with these. How can a protest which happens on national television, distributed on one of the widest viewerships in America, be a silent protest that isn't effective enough? Then they want to talk about just because these football players might get death threats, that this isn't a valid method of protest. We say that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if all of them get death threats. Why? Because of the fundamental principles on which they are doing this. They are doing an inherently good act. They're defending the freedom of speech on which their country was founded. It doesn't matter in their best case scenario. It doesn't matter if all of them receive death threats, because even if this happens, there is no excuse to shy away from doing what is inherently good. Then they start. And even if, let's say, they get fired, like they talk about in their work, good, let them get fired. What this will do is bring about more discourse, which is what both sides want. What this will do is bring about more public awareness of the issue. What this will do is show the world how the structural inequalities of America are.
Yeah.
Then there seems to be some confusion on the opening opposition side about whether or not they want their protests to be peaceful or to be radical. 1 minute they talk about how these protests aren't peaceful enough and they want more peaceful. Then they switch sides completely and start talking to you about whether or not they want radical, about how radical they want the protests to be. So we highly advise closing opposition to decide on what stand they want. Next, they made this absurd claim that people who watch sports media are somehow less influential than the people who watch general media. And we think that this is a practically absurd claim to make at their side. Who are they to say that people who watch sports are somehow less influential, wield more power than people who watch the news, for example, or the very, very influential athletes who might watch the sport for that instance. Next, they also talk about why it's important that Trump agrees or not. We say this is not important. It doesn't matter if Trump doesn't agree with your fundamental liberties. It doesn't matter if Trump doesn't agree on it. What is important is the fundamental principle that I'll get to in a bit after I finish the rest of my rebuttals. Then they started talking about, as I mentioned in my POI, a world that is disrespectful. Here's the first problem with that. Respect and disrespect is inherently subjective. If I curse and point the middle finger at my friend, that's obviously still, he will consider that respectful. But if I were to do that to you, Mr. Speaker, I doubt you will feel the same. That's the first problem. Respect is inherently subjective. Second of all, they seem to be trying to defend the fact that a world that is disrespectful is worse off than a world where freedom of speech is defended. We object to this. Finally, we say that even if respect is something we should be shying away from, because sure, that's a concession, that's a fact. We should be shying away from this. Like, this is not the time to be respectful now, because people are dying. The Black Lives Matter needs this kind of action, because people are dying on the streets. There's no time to be respectful when people are being shot by policemen. Now, on to my extensions. First of all, yeah, sure.
This protest against discrimination happens because the country disrespects your rights, right? So how are you any different from the bad guy? You want to disrespect your own country.
Okay. So you think we're disrespecting our own country? Okay, we'll get to that in a bit. Wait for that. First, we talk about how even if we fail, right? Because other guys said they get positive to us that this might not be good because we might fail. We tell you, like I said just now, that even if we do fail, the act of doing good is principally enough to justify this action. If you were to take if someone points a gun at you and you know that you have to defend someone and you know you have your bare hands, we still say that you should do this because it's inherently good. Because what they're defending here is not an arbitrary notion of what's going on. What they are defending here is that their own definition, and they consider it just now what is a fundamental human right, the freedom of expression. This is important because not only is it a fundamental human right, but it's a fundamental American right. If like pure now she thinks she's disrespecting the country, we don't agree. We say that America was founded on the principles of personal freedoms and liberty. America as a country specifically was built upon these fundamental freedoms. And when you defend these fundamental freedoms, you are being a patriotic American. Next, why NFL players who have to take upon this burden? Because like opening head did a good job explaining just now, they have wide influence, right? Huge viewership. But what they didn't talk about is the injustice that's being dealt against NFL players when you expect them to act a certain way. Because what happens when you're an NFL player and you get this much screen time? What's happening in the real world is that just because you're an athlete, you're expected to act a certain way. You can't go against the system and you have to act in a very cookie-cutter manner just because you are great at television, just because you're professional. We disagree with this on a fundamental level. Next. The inherent right to freedom of expression, which I've covered many times already. Now we're going to tell you why it has to be during the national anthem and why any claims of not being patriotic on their side are inherently wrong. We tell you that in order that if an NFL player chooses to take a stand during the national anthem, what does this mean? There's reason he took a stand during the national anthem and not any random pop song playing on the radio. This is because he has ascribed a value to the national anthem that it is in that taking a stand during the national anthem as opposed to any other time is more important. And in order for him to make this assumption, to make that, he must first concede that the national anthem is of importance. So when he concedes the national anthem has inherent value and is of importance, he's conceding that he's ascribing value in these things which signify patriotism. Next we talk to you about how defending these fundamental liberties is patriotic in and of itself. The Boston Tea Party was most definitely not respectful. Martin Luther King was definitely not respectful. Muhammad Ali, when he refused to fight the Vietnam War, it was illegal at the time, sure, even then. And keep in mind that right now, Mr. Speaker, this is another point we're going to make, that at no point is this illegal. When Muhammad Ali refused to on the Vietnam War, he was ostracized, but we don't care because it is about these fundamental liberties, these American values that we're defending on our side of the house. Next, so far we're giving you all these great ethical reasons, right? But that's not what our entire case is premised upon. We're here to give you practical reasons as well why it's important to take a stand. First of all, in order for your country to develop as a nation, you must encourage discourse, and this is what we want on our side of the house. We want discourse. We don't want a state where the state can never be criticized, where anything related to the state, such as your police officers, are inherently holy, where your law is gospel, and anything against the state is inherently wrong. We don't want a state like that. We want a state, especially the United States, considering this is not China the debate is taking place in, where you're allowed to criticize the government, where you're allowed to criticize every structural argument, because that's the only way a nation can develop. That's the only way a nation can grow. That's the only way change can occur. Finally, the NFL is also an important stakeholder in this debate. The NFL is also, considering that they are the National Football Association for Football League, Football Association, whatever, for America, we say that it is their duty to uphold these values, that they should be assigned towards for the viewership, for the children who are watching, if you were to pick a rosy example. Finally, we tell you that under their world, what the government is encouraging is a society where if you don't conform, if you do not obey, you are wrong. What they are encouraging is a society where discourse is not encouraged. What they are encouraging is a society where as long as you're seen as taking a stand against a man, like what Nick Tam said just now, you are automatically wrong. This is not something that we want. We believe in an America that is free. We believe in an America that is great. Thank you. For all the reasons we propose.
As a member of government, featuring this event of
Mr. Speaker, sir, we do recognize that national identity, the people of US, they should stand united. So the uniformity respecting certain norms, gestures, towards nationalism is very important in this issue, Mr. Speaker, sir. But what we don't understand is like to how far, to what extent do this kneeling alone is to bring about any change, Mr. Speaker, sir. And even if they claim that there are changes, Mr. Speaker, sir, we would like to inform you that these changes are temporary and it will die as soon as possible, because this kind of protest has never proven beneficial, as how the opening opposition said earlier, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, on the closing opposition side, we would like to extend on two levels, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, I'm going to show you how this is problem-solution mismatch. And number two, Mr. Speaker, sir, they need to consider some functional approaches, functional measures to be taken if they want to bring about change, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, sit down. Now, opening houses today is very simple, Mr. Speaker, sir. They have this mentality that like kneeling while national anthem has a one-night magical outcome that everything will change one day, Mr. Speaker, sir. This kind of false is very American, Mr. Speaker, sir. Very politically safe, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, opening opposition has pointed out that how this is not impactful and unrealistic, Mr. Speaker. So you listen first, sir. Thank you very much. All right. Now, closing houses today, we at least would like to recognize that we need certain functional approaches, Mr. Speaker, sir. Not to appreciate, not to disrespect your national identity and so on, Mr. Speaker, sir. But while respecting your national identity, you have to bring about the changes, and you need some certain functional, approaches in that case, Mr. Speaker. Now let us just rebut first, Mr. Speaker, sir. Sit down. Right, they talked about freedom of expressing opinions, Mr. Speaker, sir. Of course, we do recognize, right? America, it applies a lot of modern, of course, they do accept, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I would like to tell you that it's not only a US, Mr. Speaker, sir. Worldwide inequality is happening in certain ways, Mr. Speaker, sir. So do they mean like every nation they have to kneel down during the Nagaraku or whatever one day Mother Indonesia, Mr. Speaker, sir? This is absurd, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now let me just tell you, this is a floodgate, Mr. Speaker, sir. Others will also conform to this kind of disrespectful and they think simply by disrespecting your national anthem, you are bringing about change, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, silent protest has never solved any problem in the past and not in the near future, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is not a family problem where the wife fucks because the husband is treating her unequally, Mr. Speaker, sir. This is a national level issue. Yes. No, yes.
Okay. So, if you're saying that silent protests is enough, what do you propose here to bring about change into this?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll tell you in my second argument later, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, they also talk about how important is this discourse, Mr. Speaker, sir, on certain national issues. Now, what is the point of sparking a conversation, sparking a discourse, Mr. Speaker, sir, when any average American has no say in bringing about the change, Mr. Speaker, sir? Eventually, this is going to be talked. Yes, media attention is given. Yes, we recognize that. But how far this is going to bring about the change, Mr. Speaker, sir? This will be silent as how the protest started, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, moving on, how this is a mismatch of solution, Mr. Speaker, sir. How for a small group of people kneeling during national anthem bring about any change? Now, they claim that's the media attention. A lot of people watching. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is just a thing to be taught by these potato couches, Mr. Speaker, sir. People who just go for like NBA and whatnot, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, these people are not going to bring about any change. You need to tackle the right authority. You need to tackle the right target group to bring about any change, Mr. Speaker, sir. If the people never protested against slavery, Mr. Speaker, sir, I don't think any change would have happened in America. Yes, sir.
You say the silent protests have never brought about change, right? The Boston Tea Party, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and the UMNO protests for independence in our country, like a word.
Mr. Speaker, sir, those are not silent protests, Mr. Speaker, sir. Those are non-violent protests. That's the difference, Mr. Speaker, sir. Like kneeling down without saying a word doesn't carry any weight, Mr. Speaker, sir. You need to gather the crowd. You need to use the discourse to explain to the crowd that this is the change that we would like to bring about, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, I'm a 8-year-old boy, Mr. Speaker, sir. By seeing an NBA player just kneeling down, it's like, oh, I can do this at home. That is easy. It is not explained what is the purpose of doing this. Because now this approach is very isolated, right? We do sit down. We think like not only athletes or like black or colored people, but all races should play a role in fighting inequality, Mr. Speaker. And how to achieve this, Mr. Speaker? We need some functional solution. Number one, Mr. Speaker. We need like demonstration, Mr. Speaker. Mass can cause a change, Mr. Speaker. People have to get down to the road and people have to protest this. Clearly, if they find inequalities killing people, is wiping out a certain minority group, Mr. Speaker. Now, LGBT group did this, Mr. Speaker. And people against slavery did this, Mr. Speaker. So worldwide pressure will bring about a remedial action, Mr. Speaker. Besides that, Mr. Speaker, we also have legal approaches. They are not taking anymore, right? Laws are there when people are ill-treated, Mr. Speaker, right? Blacks, colored, or even like whites or whoever in America, Mr. Speaker, they are protected by law, Mr. Speaker. So people who are in law can bring about the change, Mr. Speaker. How far NBA players are attracting this, Mr. Speaker? That is a direct match, Mr. Speaker. Third, political power, Mr. Speaker. US recognize that more people, more colored and black people in politics, Mr. Speaker. Now they should take the fight to a higher level, Mr. Speaker. Now these people are not doing their work. No matter you spark the conversation, at the end of the day, it's going to be fruitful. It's not going to be fruitful because these people are not targeted, Mr. Speaker. By just aiming at the viewers, Mr. Speaker, nothing is going to take place, Mr. Speaker. Now, very simple, Mr. Speaker, we would like to say that we, from the closing opposition, we really want to protect our national identity. Uniformity in respecting your national anthem is very important. If you want to fight, you fight the right way, Mr. Speaker, by not just kneeling down in front of people. At the end of the day, it is not beneficial and it is not taking anyone anywhere. Thank you very much.
So what side opposition has decided to do and come up here today? Let's talk about how it is inadequate for us to support the people kneeling in NFL stadiums. We have proven to you why there's already a wide, we need to, firstly, before I move on to my issues and substantives, I'd like to rebut a few arguments coming from side closing opposition. So let's talk about the notion of respectfulness and how they talk about why is it important in today's debate. And we say really proven to you why it is not important. The fact that when this is the point of kneeling is the point of kneeling is a silent protest, and protests are inherently disrespectful because one, they stand up against the institution that is going against that. They're going against the norms and against social norms and going against the very institution that they are under. And the fact that you can't, so it is impossible for you to both be protesting and also be respectful towards the institution. Number two, they talked about why it is important for you to appear patriotic in today's debate now. Now, I'd like to propose another about this whole kneeling issue. We say that the kneeling thing is the most patriotic thing you could do. Why do we say so? It is because it stands for the fact that you're condemning that them taking a kneel is extremely unpatriotic. And why do we say so? It is because that when you go against the fact that when you condemn this sort of behavior, you're telling the people that these players that you only have to act in a way that we seem appropriate, that seems respectful, and we say that this is a damn embarrassment towards the notion of American values, which is the freedom of expression, the way that you can freely freely express and talk about things that you believe in. And we say that when we support this sort of behavior, when we support that players are able to freely express and kneeling when the national anthem comes from, we say that the values of this, when we support this, it is very patriotic because it stands for the very values that make America, which is how the fact that personal freedom and specifically the ability to freely express yourselves. Now let me move on to resubstantiate an argument coming on from my member of government. So he talked about the NFL being an important stakeholder in this way. Now I'd like to further go against to go into this argument. So why is it important for the NFL to support this this kneeling towards kneeling in during the national anthem? You need to understand that the NFL represents a large majority, all races, and there are all, NFL has a lot of football players that come from a variety of backgrounds, black players, white players, people, and a lot of other races. Now, we need to understand that the fact that NFL is, the NFL needs to support this because that the message that is behind this kneeling is against the institutional racism and police brutality towards a certain race, which is the African Americans. And the fact that there are African Americans inside the NFL, football players who are African American, and the fact that the NFL has them means that they are representing them. And by supporting this sort of behavior, by supporting the kneeling, the movement of kneeling, we need to understand by supporting this, because right now we need to understand that the players are also, because the fact that they are African American players, we need to understand that they have been impacted by this sort of problems such as police brutality, racism, and because they are under this sort of line of fire, they can be harmed by the problems that are happening right now in the state. We understand that is why NFL, there is enough justification on why NFL needs to support this, because their players are directly in the line of fire of these problems of racism. So what are the key issues of this debate? Firstly, on why is it enough? So let me tell you, so we talked to you how we talked to you how it is enough already for like how it is important for these players to kneel because of the white news coverage, and why the side opposition has come up here today. They talk about how our case is not enough and we need to take a step further. Why do you think to understand why and why? Now the problem with the side opposition case is because they have been very vague about their case and what they actually want. They, on one hand, they have talked to you about how they want to be respectful, and we will be told that they want to be respectful in order for you to bring about change. Number two, and why this is not being respectful, but on the other hand, they want you to take further steps into being more active in protesting this, in these problems. We say this is a very stark very big contradiction within their case. We say that they should fall because of that. Now, second of and why they fall on that. And now the second issue of why is respectfulness important into this debate. We have proven to you why respectfulness is not an issue in this debate, because the fact that you're protesting is already against social norms and is already inherently disrespectful. So we say that this shouldn't be an issue at all. So let me put you on the best case scenario now, best case and worst case scenario in a second. So let's go with the best case scenario. So what they want in this debate is they want to take active steps, and the only conceivable way we can say this is through let's say protests, larger protests in the street, or they talk about how they need to be respectful or something like that. And we say that their best case scenario is still worse than our worst case scenario, because number one, it doesn't get the news coverage that we want. Because at the end of the day, we need to understand that sports coverage is much larger and wider towards, and has much more a larger following than the news coverage. And we say that even if and let's take a look at our worst case scenario. Our worst case scenario is the fact that nothing happens, that brings about no change at all. But at least now we take a stand but we need to understand that at least when these people kneel against in the national anthem, at least we understand, at least we stand up and follow our principles to go and speak out and express themselves against police brutality and the problems that are going on in the state. And for all those reasons, go with side closing government.
Let me check lead by the opposition leader.
Mr. Speaker, so today's debate is quite confusing, and no, I mean it is quite up and downs. It's a roller coaster ride, so I'm just gonna chill and let everyone calm down and let's think rationally about what it should be and what it shouldn't. So, firstly, the opening government, he said that the athletes should say something because they have influence and because they are able to change the norm of the society. We do agree on this fact because it is an obvious fact that many people watch sports, just like Malaysians watch football, Americans watch the American football. However, here we want to like derive a little bit from the opening government because we already stated that we would want demonstrations on the street. So when we want demonstrations on the street, we don't really, I mean, we value their freedom of speech more than their respect. So now I can go and say whatever I want, right? So now that by the silent, what's the word again? By the silent
Protest.
Sorry, silent protest. With a silent protest, it has a very little impact. So, what in closing opposition side, we would like to take it a notch higher. Like, why don't we take it to the extreme? Because someone said, I don't remember who said, but someone said that, oh, this is not the time for respect. So yes, that's true. Okay, thank you. So this is not the time for respect, but this is also not the time for us to stay silent. So we need to make, for not the time for us to take like very lukewarm approach. We need to take more radical approaches, like, yeah. So like, because the thing is, all right.
Okay. Black Lives Matter demonstrations led to riots. How did this lead to a functional solution such as negotiations? By that I mean, can someone be respectfully radical?
But we already threw respect down to the drain, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, so anyways, even if you have like the silent protest, the thing is, not everyone cares. Like, not everyone in this world are nice people, okay? So there will be sides that agrees with it, and there will be sides that would not agree with it. And even then, even if there is like discussions and discourse, it does not prove that this discussion are effective enough, and would it be even permanent enough, because humans have like such short-term memories. Like, they wouldn't remember it. Like, would they even discuss it further and further? Yes, I'll take any question.
Sure.
Because all right.
Can you prove that shouldn't be taking a stand just because there's a chance people might forget it?
Because there's a chance we won't forget it.
You want to rephrase that?
I don't understand.
Your point is that we shouldn't be protesting because people have short-term memory and they
Yeah.
might forget it.
Yeah.
What proof do you have that people are just going to forget a massive protest, not massive, a influential protest like this?
I'm not saying that it's a bad thought. I'm saying that you should do something more extreme, like do it on the streets, like make it more known, you know? And well, when a small group of people could create a change, well, actually, the biggest change would be when the leaders change. So, since we are all so radical, right? Why don't we just teach the okay? Why don't we just teach Countdown? Okay, no, I'm just kidding. Like by doing this, you're not gonna affect. Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care, so he's not gonna change anything anyway, and he wouldn't tweet anything anyway. So that's why we need to make it more radical approach. Okay, like yeah. So the world is a big place. This is a big situation. We are all sad. Thank you.
Huh? No, but you probably it's in the laptop stage.
Alright, thanks. Thank you so much.
You're right.
Alright, welcome back. So this is how the event is going to go. I'm going to give you the verdict and then gauge what I wish to predict. For personal feedback and also constructive, which want to be during lunch, I want you all to get in the head of the queue, so we all can go and enjoy lunch and then I'm doing lunch after lunch, preferably during lunch. Okay, so eventually I give it to the graph bench as a whole. So first opening government, second to closing government, third to closing opposition, and unfortunately fourth to opening opposition. So why is this a government as a whole? So to me, I think that it's a government mainly for two reasons. Number one, I think propose an alternative in this instance, although wanted for it to be more radical in the sense of media conferences. CO wanted it to be more radical in the sense of going on the street, which I think both of them, I think CO had more grounding when it comes to like what defines radical and what our normal perception of what radical is that they actually are managing to show more impact. But I think beyond just suggesting an alternative, I think we need to be able to commit to showing what are the analysis behind that. For example, action that you're taking, and also how does the NFL athletes or basically any American athlete play this going on the street? Because as far as I know, the suggestion of a going on the street is something that is like a movement, for example, like BLM, for example, like the LGBT marches. But how does the athlete part play into this form of alternative that is suggesting? I think we need to be clearer in doing that in order to allow us to have a comparative of, okay, OG and CG wanted a silent protest versus your side of what athletes should do with it. I think just merely stating it without any analysis, when I think government did a decent job in actually establishing a lot of post analysis, means that they already immediately are the higher level review. But I think the second one is that I think they were sort of like inherent flaws and contradictions within your case itself. So for example, like OO, in the sense I think you suffered more the right way, maybe because that's the reason why you got for, was because I think you weren't able to know necessarily what do you want. So I think OO suggested that you want a more relevant step, for example, you come to the press conference and media, but also saying that at some point that you will get a lot of consequences, but I think the suggestion that you will get a lot of consequences, proceeding to then tell you that you need to be more radical, means that you will also need to wait to deal with those consequences, because if you're going to go more radical, obviously those harms are going to come in more radical ways. So I think there needs to be some form of harm mitigation that's done on your side, in order to make sure that whatever you said earlier as a rebuttal to them doesn't also rebut later on. So I think the second thing, and the DLO, I think what she tried to do was, instead of going into this whole mechanistic way of comparing how we should do it, I think what she did was instead suggesting the harms, which I think was a legitimate way of how opposition should actually go into this debate. Like, I understand that it might be hard for you to come up with an alternative, just saying why this is a bad idea, why third, for example, this is going away into constructive data. Why, for example, it's better for athletes to not do that because they immediately lose any of the social leverage, they immediately, for example, piss people off. Considering the demographics of people who watch NFL are usually white, conservative males, you doing that during something that directly tarnishes the ability for them to call themselves patriotic, means that people are going to be very pissed. They are not able to actually engage with you. I think those are valuable how you can run opposition rather than getting confused trying to suggest what is the other way of us doing that. Because I think like whilst it will be better if you can give an alternative, I think merely telling me the harms of why that action is done and why it does we should be credited is also a legitimate way of actually coming as opposition in this debate. So I think that's something that maybe you can work on. But the alternative of that is that you weren't able to give like any form of analysis or alternative. That's why I think O got a 4. CO, however, even though for example I feel that they also suffer from the same problem as you, I think at least they'll be able to show me more, like for example, analysis of telling me what are these functional approaches. So for example, telling me that why when you escalate the issue to a national level, that means that for example the discount will be one of good quality. In the quality tablets everywhere they might be the 8 issues suggested by the method of law. And proceed to tell me why a lot of times the problem solution mismatch, why for example is very different. For example, going on the streets is a suggestion of telling me why they should necessarily go out there and potentially go and influence more people. Which I think whilst it was lacking analysis, I think it was clearer from them to tell me what are the impacts of those actions, rather than you suggesting that for example media covering conferences and then having an assertion of saying that people who watch media conferences are more in the ability to do something, which I don't think was ever back up by. So I think it was clearer when it comes to for example telling me what are the actions, why having a higher propensity for their action to actually take place and have any sort of beneficial outcome, which is why I think still overall. When it comes to Delta Mesh and more, I think this was closer. To me, eventually OG edged over CG because of 2 reasons. Number one, I think CG, whilst I think it gave like more contextualization and more, for example, telling me why the American freedom is something that's essential, it's not only about human rights, it's also about what extension is very relevant. I think what was lacking was that I think it still reached, for example, the same outcome. It still was the extension basically of what was already